Hey everyone, it's Brianna here with a little announcement. This week is Courtney's birthday, plus I was massively sick and unable to record, so we're taking a week off from our regular episodes. You might have heard us mention that we wanted to put up a Patreon episode on our regular feed, so that you guys can get a feel for what kind of extra content is on our Patreon. And, of course, this week seems like a perfect time to do that. This particular episode was released on Patreon a few months back, and it's a great example of the kind of bonus episodes that are on our Patreon feed. So if you like what you hear and you want to check out our Patreon, it's patreon.com/murderdictionarypodcast. We will be back to start Letter J for Jailhouse Murders next week, and we're kicking it off with Christopher Scarver, whose name you might recognize because he murdered Jeffrey Dahmer. So it's going to be a fascinating episode, and I'm really looking forward to diving into that case next week. In the meantime, head over to our Patreon for more bonus content like the episode you're about to hear, and don't forget to wish Captain Cordy Court a very happy birthday. So enjoy the episode, and we'll see you guys next week. Hello and welcome to a Patreon bonus of Murder Dictionary Podcast. I am Brianna, you know me, and that is Courtney.
Hello.
So we had talked about on the regular show, the main show, non-Patreon, that we were looking for dentists because Courtney had suggested a dentist case to cover for letter D. And we ended up going with another subject, but Court was all over the dentist. So we're going to cover a dentist tonight.
I was doing so much research just preemptively like, hey, we should do this. Look at all this stuff I found. And then, you came at me just ready to roll. So, okay, fine. We'll put dentists off. But then I thought I did just so much work. And there are so many killer dentists and just the dental industry in general. Make sure to be checking these people out because 1 in 1 dies when you go under anesthesia.
There's just a lot of shadiness.
Freaks me out.
And I knew it was a good subject to cover. However, I was all over dirty cops. So I was pushing for dirty cops.
Everyone gets excited about a dirty cop, right? Nobody gets excited about going to the dentist. I understand.
Exactly.
It carries over into true crime.
I had braces trauma. So I was just in the back of my head no dentist.
I said this last time when I said this originally that I had an orthodontist, or he was just a kid's dentist, Dr. Supertooth.
Yes.
And he wore a cape, and his office is just the coolest thing ever. Fish tanks and stuff to play with. And he's still out here in the valley, but one of the best children's dentists ever, Dr. Supertooth.
Man, I wish my dentist was that fun. Maybe I wouldn't have been scared of them.
I wonder if he sees adults.
Oh,
we could call him and be like, hey, I got this grown woman.
Yo, Dr. Supertooth, we got a problem.
Wear the cape.
We have a princess for you.
Perfect.
So we looked into some dental cases and Courtney found Clara Harris. And I was familiar with this case, but for some reason I forgot it. And I don't know how. I think the main thing that I forgot was just that they were dentists.
Same exact here. I mean, I'd heard this story and, I remember it. Well, but I didn't. And bonus, it's 2 dentists together. Dentist killing dentist.
Yes. Dentist on dentist crime.
It has everything.
Yeah, so I was just...
Dentist on dentist crime. Sorry, continue.
When you sent it over, I was just like, oh, yeah, this case. I totally forgot they were
all
dentists.
about it.
But it's got so much jam-packed into one story. So we're going to just dive right into the dentist case. So Clara Suarez was born, a Colombian immigrant born in Bogota.
Bogota.
God, I did that last time.
It's okay.
Bogota.
I only know that from 90 Day Fiancé. Let's be real. Bogota.
It's so weird. I feel like I've heard it pronounced another way, and so
I
my brain
to put the
won't.
accent there. That's why.
Even if you did, you know how it just doesn't compute in your brain.
Know.
So Clara was extremely smart and did really well in school. She finished college and went to dental school in both Colombia and in the US, both, which is just, I mean, she was a really smart, driven girl.
She liked school.
When she moved to the US, she started entering into pageants, and she was crowned Mrs. Columbia Houston. Clara met David Harris while working at Castle Dental Center in Houston.
I mean, she's working on her own as a dentist. She's very successful at what she's trying to do. And then meets another successful dentist.
Right.
So far, so great.
Yeah. And she's just super smart. And I don't know, like...
It's a love story.
It is a love story. And she's doing well on her own. Because oftentimes you see the, husband and wife murders are... She's a housewife or whatnot. Nothing shitty about that. I'm not trying to shit on housewives. But it is important to note at this time, in the 90s, she was one of those women that was just really, really into her career,
Walking to work in sneakers and then putting her pumps on when she gets there.
Yes, she was that lady. So Clara and David were married on Valentine's Day 1992 at the Windermere Yacht Club, which was next door to the Nassau Bay Hilton Hotel in Houston. After they got married, Clara bought her own dental practice. And then she brought her husband on board at her office to be the orthodontist.
I love that. She brought her husband on board.
Yes. She was the one lifting him up.
We might have to do our service here to David and Clara and release this on Valentine's Day.
Ooh.
Because it would be their anniversary.
It's coming up.
That's like this week. It's Thursday, I think.
Yeah.
It is.
Girl, I'm dropping this on Thursday.
Done.
I didn't even realize.
Me neither.
A short time later, he opened his own orthodontics practice called Space Center Orthodontics.
Space Center because of the Houston
Yes.
space shuttle launching. Put that together.
And I bet it also had an awesome theme.
That office had to be really cool.
Just like Castle Dental. It must have been, prince and princesses and frogs and all sorts of stuff, right?
It would be really cool if they had an astronaut suit that you could try on while you're in there waiting for your exam.
Yes.
That'd be cool.
You just take some pictures inside a little astronaut helmet.
That sounds fun.
Totally. Space Center ended up being so successful that they actually expanded and opened up 5 more locations. They did really well. Due to the success of their practice, they led this upscale lifestyle with, of course, nice cars, a huge estate in Friendswood, Texas. They were living large. They were making millions of dollars and enjoying it. As many said, they were the perfect couple.
You know what that means?
Something bad is going to happen.
They'll become a Dateline episode.
Don't ever become the perfect couple.
Never.
Always have some sort of chaos in your relationship. Otherwise, you're more at risk, it seems. Together, they were raising David's daughter from a previous marriage named Lindsay. And they also had their own twin sons, Brian and Bradley, who were born in 1988. And from what I understand, there was a long fertility struggle for them, so it took a while for them to actually have their own children. But eventually, they were really excited when the twins came along.
I read that David had really pushed. They did in vitro, and he was the one really pushing for children with her.
Yes. After 10 years of marriage in 2002, a woman named Gail Bridges started working at David's practice. And pretty soon after, he started having lunch with her, hanging around her desk a little bit more. It was clear that they were starting to get close. Gail was a 39-year-old mother of 3 whose ex-husband had actually accused her of having a lesbian affair with her best friend. There's kind of some conflicting accounts as to whether it's true or not. I heard that later on she admitted in therapy that he was right and there was something there, but there's a lot of people that say that never happened, that he was just being paranoid.
Even if that's true, there's more saying it wasn't, and she went on a tour trying to tell everyone that they didn't. So even if it is true, Gail doesn't want you to know.
Yeah.
And neither does her best friend. So at this point, all you can say is, no, they didn't have a relationship.
Right. There was a suspicion, but it seems like that wasn't the case.
And it's kind of like a fucked up thing to throw at someone too, even like an ex-husband. If you've got a girlfriend you're really close with, like that's just feels like reaching for me and just like bottom barrel shit. Like I just want to hurt your feelings. And I'll get with this asshole because he doesn't give a shit either.
Right.
It bothered me.
Yeah. So when that all went down and he was really suspicious of her husband had actually hired Blue Moon Investigations to put them under surveillance, but they found no evidence of an affair. So really there was just nothing corroborating his story. So even though the investigators found that there was no evidence, and by all accounts she wasn't cheating, they still got divorced. It was enough to drive a huge wedge between them. So it was pretty clear that there was a romantic connection with Gail and David, and they began a relationship. David told his mistress that Clara had cheated on him before, and now at this point they had this open marriage, this open situation.
I don't believe that.
No.
It's an open relationship. Maybe Clara cheated on him. And if she did not, he's telling people that to back up the open relationship story. So therefore, that's what he wants ultimately.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think it seems like emotionally Clara's the open relationship type of person.
No.
And I think open relationships work for a lot of people, and polyamory is a very big deal, that it takes a lot of honesty and commitment. But I don't think that this couple was that couple.
Some people are not built for open relationships. Anything other than monogamy, you are with me.
Yes.
A lot of people are not made for anything other than that.
And whatever works for a couple works for a couple. It's nobody else's business to say, but you can't really agree to an open relationship if you're not in that headspace.
It's not one-sided.
No.
Let's put it that way.
It definitely takes participation from both. So I just don't see it with her. It seems like I would say that this was a story he made up. So
I agree.
Eventually, after dating Gail for a little while, David told her that he was in love with her and that he planned on leaving his wife, Clara, for her. One of their longtime employees, Diana Sherrill, noticed some questionable behavior between David and Gail. So she told Clara to keep an eye on her husband.
It's a good friend.
Yeah.
She'd been a coworker for so long.
So long. So, I mean, she knew both of them. She didn't have a loyalty specifically to David. She had worked, it was both of them that owned the business. So she did the right thing and was just like, hey, maybe you should look into this, you know? So Clara was, of course, suspicious that David was cheating on her. She knew that there were problems and she felt that David was pulling away. And it seemed like he was a little bit angry lately. So there was a marked difference in his behavior.
It almost seems also because of, what he's telling Gail at the same time. It's almost like he wants Clara to leave him first.
Yes.
Like I just felt that the whole time. Like if you leave me, we'll be fine. What am I trying to say? I said it first fine, the right way.
It seems to me, I think that it would get rid of his guilt if he was like just so distant that she was like, I can't handle this, let's get a divorce.
Yes.
Then he didn't have to feel bad about leaving her.
You got it.
He was trying to push her away so that she would end it.
There's so much going on up here.
It was
trying to say what I'm trying to say.
It was the most cowardly way to go about it, really.
I agree.
So in the span of less than a month, possibly as short as just a week or two, there were a ton of suspicious, weird behaviors on Clara's part. She started going to a tanning salon. She hired a personal trainer. She got a new wardrobe. She bought a bunch of lingerie. She started cooking David's favorite meals every night and put down $5,000 for a breast augmentation and liposuction. She also allegedly had sex with him 3 times a night.
Oh, it's terrible. It's the worst part of this whole thing for me is like, oh, she went to a consult. That's 3 times a night. Fuck.
Well, also, he's an ass to her. He's being complete, cold, angry jerk. And she's like, all right, well, I'll just keep fucking you and trying to make it better.
It's sad because it's like, oh, it might be different. I don't think it's suspicious behavior. I think it's desperate. It's a woman who's trying to just take the information that her husband has given her and put it into a realistic way to keep him. And he's lying to her. I mean, this isn't going to keep him, but she's just grabbing anything she can to keep her life together.
Yeah, I totally, when I was saying it, I was like, yeah, I'm misspeaking. That's not the right word. It's
definitely because something it's different.
Yeah, it's a change. It's definitely unusual. I shouldn't say suspicious. Unusual. It's unusual for her because she seemed to be such a consistent, like hardworking, driven career woman, devoted mother. She was in these kind of categories. Then all of a sudden she's just like, I am going to be this tight fit, hot young thing out of nowhere. Like, I'm going to do anything it takes. Just go under the knife. It doesn't matter. So it was very weird for her to completely shift her focus from her kids and her career that she had been dedicated to her whole life to just looking at her looks and her family or her husband.
I feel like also if you were somebody in their peripheral and you're from the outside looking in and you see this going on all of a sudden, you kind of think like, oh, something's not right in that house.
Absolutely. Right away, if you see all these things happening, you're like, oh no, their marriage is in trouble.
It's different if, like, let's say that when they first met, she wore makeup and she did all this. She's hardworking. Then she's raising kids. And then, for a while, she's kind of let herself go, this and that. But internally, she's always been like a makeup girl, like that kind of thing. So then when she gets back on track, yeah, she's doing her makeup, doing her hair and stuff. It's not normal in the sense she hasn't done it in a while. But with Clara, like, she was just career woman.
Yes.
She did not care. Except she did do the pageants. So this shouldn't seem weird.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think other than the pageants, it didn't seem like that may have been a natural thing for her.
Pageants
that
is like
she
the
had
only
to, like,
question.
Get done up for that kind of thing. But otherwise, I don't think that was her main focus until now, where she completely shifts and it changes just overnight. But either way, I mean, it's a total red flag that there's something wrong in that house, So her suspicions were confirmed when on July 17th, David actually admitted that he was having an affair with his employee, Gail Bridges. He said that he would do anything to not get a divorce, but Clara really wondered if this was only because of financial reasons and saving the business. When Clara told her stepdaughter, Lindsay said she already knew. And she even elaborated and said everyone in the office knew. And at that point, of course, we know Clara was just completely humiliated.
It sucks.
It's one thing to know that it's happening. But it adds this extra layer to know that everybody else knows but you.
And your stepdaughter's just, oh, you didn't know? Everyone knows.
It's so
Everyone
sad.
knows, Mom.
Yeah,
right?
It's terrible. So David agreed to fire Gail, but Clara decided to go to his office to ensure that it happened. When she arrived, she very professionally approached Gail and just asked her to speak alone in the back office. She took Gail to the back and then locked the office door behind them. And she started basically interrogating Gail about what had happened and the nature of the relationship with her husband. And of course, Gail denied everything. But of course, Clara figured she wasn't telling the truth. It was really easy to see through it. So she fired her and she demanded that Gail give back the keys to the office so she couldn't have access. Later, Clara and David met with his parents to discuss the trouble in their marriage. And David at that time seemed really remorseful, and all of them prayed together.
Seems like she kind of really leaned, like the last ditch effort was the guilt trip of religion.
Mm-hmm.
And his parents, they were very close with and would take into consideration anything they said. A lot of it was religious based, and this feels last ditch effort.
Absolutely. From what I understand, they were really close with the parents. They did a lot of family trips. They did a lot of double dates, oddly enough. But it seemed like they were always the ones that could help talk sense to him, and the added benefit of religion, which, of course, is anti-adultery. So to her, it was like, yeah, these will be the people that will be able to get him in his right mind.
Yeah, if anyone can let him see what he's doing wrong, they can.
Exactly. So afterwards, they went to dinner. And at the dinner, David listed all the things that he liked about Gail. And he compared Clara and Gail. Clara took it so seriously that she actually took notes on a napkin while he was talking.
This poor woman.
It's just so terrible to have that be the reaction. Like, you're doing the wrong thing. You're cheating on me. Now let's turn it into it being my fault and make it about my failures, my shortcomings, and all the physical attributes that you don't like about me.
And
it's sick.
She's so like, her history is if you study and you do well, you get ahead.
Yes.
So all she knows is like he's giving her a lecture and she just is taking notes. Because that's what you do to fix this, to get the degree, to whatever it is. You have to take your notes. You have to make sure you're listening. And everything that they say, you have to remember and then put it into action.
That's the perfect way to put it. I mean, she was just going to study to be the best wife for David.
When you don't know something, what do? You look it up, you research it, you write it down. It's sad.
Yeah, that's where her mind was at. She was just like, whatever it takes, I'm going to absorb all the information so that whatever you want, I'm going to be that. It was just really, really devastating. One of the biggest differences that David brought up was how much Gail listened to him. And she made more time for him and encouraged his ideas. And in general, it seemed like he was saying she was a better communicator. He also said that she had bigger boobs, a smaller body, and that they fit better together when they were having sex.
That's just icky. Like, to tell her that, I never liked that. I think that's such a pathetic thing to bring up and just a way to like make her feel worse.
Really, if you even think that, you should never say it out loud. You know that that's such a cruel thing. The only reason to say that is if you're looking to hurt someone. And that really bothers me.
Yeah, that's the only reason you say something like that.
Because he was trying to hurt her, it seems.
Bringing up an exact specific reason why he wants to have sex with her more and why it is okay and why it makes sense. Just rationalize this shit away.
Yeah, let's just justify my awful behavior. That's crazy. So, of course, Clara's reaction to this was not only to absorb everything she could and learn from it, but she also reminded him that she was really trying to make changes to her appearance. And she really promised that she would cut back on working. And she, at that point, could focus more on bettering herself and being the perfect wife for him. So that became her new goal. The next day, she announced to her employees that she was retiring from the practice so she could be a stay-at-home mom. But we know, of course, that her mission really was to just make changes to herself for her husband. David.
Let's say you just bought a house. Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn. Ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn. Tell people to stay off the lawn. Compare it to your neighbor's lawn. And complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
He told Clara that he wanted to break it off with Gail gently, and that he needed to take her out to dinner to do it, which he planned to do on July 24th, 2002.
If she were to stop working and they stay together and then like she's just home all day, did he think that he thought that he could just have his cake and eat it too? Like Claire's at home and then Gail's at work? Or was this ultimately like Gail's not going to want to stay home? She's going to break up with me. We're going to break up. This is means to an end? Or do you think that he was stupid? Like, do you think he really thought he could have them both?
Yeah, it's so confusing. I think that you did think he could have it both ways.
I do too.
You know? And I think he did want to keep both of them. And I don't know how much love he had for Clara at this point, because it does seem like he really viewed her as a business deal.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he really is putting his heart out for Clara. Like, let me protect to make sure Clara's okay with this. I mean, but she's obviously like, whatever he tells her to do, she's taking notes and trying to do it. So he might think that she would be okay with it, and he could have his cake and eat it too.
I think that he was setting it up to really gaslight her into feeling like she was lucky that he stayed with her.
Yeah.
Even if he did cheat. You know what I mean? And it's, I don't know. I mean, at first she was the more successful one. Now they seem a little bit more like equals, but their finances are all tied in together. So she may not be like she may not be the sugar mommy or anything like that, but he definitely had a lot to lose financially by not being with her. And so I think he was ready to exploit the fact that she really deeply loved him and would do anything to basically save the business and save his affair. You know, he figured he could kind of gaslight her into it, I think.
Because if they break up and she's not working, that's not good.
Right.
It's interesting.
Then he's screwed. So I think that, he was really setting it up to where she would say she'd stay at home, but then she would go back to work. They would continue making money and he could continue fucking Gail. You know, he was trying to make it easy for himself. So the day of David and Gail's dinner, Clara hired Blue Moon Investigation, the same investigation company that had looked into the lesbian affair with Gail. They already knew her. So she hired them to gather information on David and confirm that he was really at the place he said and ending the affair. The investigator stayed in the parking lot of the Nassau Bay Hilton to do surveillance, which is, of course, the same hotel that was next door to where David and Clara got married.
Burn.
Yeah, insult to injury.
Yeah.
And every time, at every turn, I feel like David makes this as hard as possible.
He does, absolutely.
And it just really, really destroys any sympathy I have for him, which is terrible to say, but it's just like, you could have had a heart about any of this process.
And everything he says, he does the exact opposite of what he says he's going to do to either one of these women. I mean, he's playing them both, you know? But it's like, oh, I'm going to be here on this. No, you're not. You know, I just don't know how. I don't believe that he just starts lying to Clara like all of a sudden. I mean,
no.
This is a pattern. This is what he does. He says he's going to do something and he does the exact opposite, like George Costanza. I'm telling you, there are so many of these people we talk about. That's how they live their life. Is like that episode where it's like, I think I should do this. Let me do the opposite. It's just, it works for them. Go figure.
But I do think there was definitely a long-standing pattern of him being deceitful, dishonest, gaslighting, and really getting away with it. So why would anything change now? You know, he's just going to keep riding it till the wheels fall off.
That's right.
And
3 times a night. Jesus. Who has the time?
So David and Gail arrived at about 6 p.m. at the hotel, and they entered through the valet parking entrance. They didn't go to the restaurant for dinner. They just paid cash for room 604, and they went straight to the hotel room. After David was gone for a while, Clara went to check if he was at the restaurant that he said he was going to. When she saw that he wasn't there, she began driving around to local restaurants and hotels with David's daughter Lindsay in the car. And she was, from Lindsay's account, getting more and more upset with every passing minute, not knowing where he was.
This car ride, I always think about this, just like she's gripping the steering wheel. She's grinding her jaw. She's just like 10 and 2, looking around, pushing herself forward, looking out the windows, just freaking out and just getting more and more anxious, and her anxiety is just ramping up. And Lindsay's just in the car watching this just mental display. That's got to be. And then Lindsay's caught up in it now too, and probably like looking out the windows herself and just like, you know, this all she knows is probably some chaotic shit.
She's just 16. This must be so traumatic. Just
so
not knowing where her
hard.
dad is. Her stepmom's freaking out. She's trying to be the mediator, and she loves her dad, but she's trying to be compassionate about what Clara is going through. She's in such a tough spot. And on top of that, this must be so anxiety provoking and stressful. You don't know what's going to happen.
I can't. 16 years old. 16-year-old girl.
That's just so hard to process, being in that situation. After looking for him for quite a while, Clara called the investigator. And the investigator can't really give specific information about where the person being surveilled is, but for some reason, it must have come out that he was at a hotel. The word hotel must have been mentioned, and she immediately knew that she had to take off and head to the Nassau Bay Hilton. From what I understand, they didn't go anywhere else. They went straight to the Hilton. So she knew something was to that.
It's like the Regency in New York.
Yeah. So once she was inside the hotel, an employee told her that there was no one by either name staying at the hotel that night.
You sure about that?
Right? So she went back outside and she walked around looking for their car. And she found Gail's Lincoln Navigator in the parking lot. So she keyed the word adulterer into the car. She also ripped off all the wipers and, by all accounts, was just kicking and punching the car, making a mess. Clara told Lindsay to call her father and tell him that one of their sons was sick and that he needed to return home immediately. And from what I understand, one of their sons did have some sort of like asthma or something like that. So this wasn't the first time, and it was easily passed off as a normal, plausible story. So he goes into emergency mode and they planned it so he would leave right away and she could catch him.
Pretty smart.
Yep. So they waited downstairs and Lindsay took Clara outside because she didn't want her to cause a scene inside the lobby. When David and Gail arrived in the lobby, it was about 8:30 p.m. and they were holding hands. And of course, when Clara saw that, she completely exploded and lost it. Clara screamed, "You were with my husband." And then she knocked Gail to the floor and she started pulling her hair while she slammed her head into the floor.
How'd that dinner go? Huh?
Right?
How'd that dinner go? Were you telling her you're going to leave her?
Yeah, she was not letting that fly. It was just a crazy scene. She was in a frenzy. She also bit Gail in the leg and she ripped her blouse. David, again, just kind of being so cowardly in this situation, he just stood back and he didn't do anything to break up the fight. He just let them go at each other. And so when the hotel staff saw this, they jumped in and they separated the two women.
Now, I don't know if this is a man that likes watching women fight over him and kind of sets him up to fight over him. There's those guys out there. Or if this is someone who just really is caught, like, I don't even know what to do. Like, what do you do when they start fighting, you know?
There's got to be some sense of shock. I agree, where you're just kind of paralyzed.
Yeah.
But the other part of me is just like, whenever you see two people fighting, like, that you love, you care about both of these people, separate them.
They're two women that are fighting because of you.
You try and jump in and do something.
Do something.
Yeah, I just think that's so cowardly, you know? He set this whole thing in motion and hurt both of these women. And I mean, pretty much he's the one that made Gail vulnerable to being attacked. And he's the one that made Clara so emotional that she felt she had to lash out at her, you know? So it's your fault. Try and fix it. It's just really frustrating. So, of course, Lindsay was super upset that her dad wasn't doing anything. And she started hitting him with her purse and screaming, "I hate you," repeatedly at David. Hotel security escorted Clara back to her car, which was a silver S-Class 430 Mercedes, and then Lindsay got in the passenger seat. A hotel employee named Garrett Clark escorted Gail back to her car. And while Garrett was taking Gail, David followed them towards Gail's car. And as she was walking up towards it, of course, she noticed all the damage that Clara had done and the keying and all sorts of stuff. So she was super shocked to see what happened to her navigator. And when David saw it, he started apologizing over and over to Gail. While behind him, what he didn't see was Clara was driving her Mercedes directly at him.
And you're just sitting there seeing him talking to his mistress.
Right.
Trying to calm her down about her car that's all messed up. Nothing to do with the fact that I'm your wife, this is your kid, all these things. He's going straight to her, and that has got to make you even more angry.
Yes.
Looking through the windshield, seeing it.
Just as we said before, the insult to injury of knowing that everybody else knew, this on top of that, we finally have a confrontation. Everything's all out in the open and you can't deny it, but I'm not the woman that's the mother of your child that's been married to you, I'm not the one you want to comfort. That's unacceptable. She lost her shit because he goes straight to Gail and she just had a breakdown. So, of course, Clara, seeing this, came speeding towards David and hit him, which threw his body 25 feet. She also hit the hotel worker, Garrett Clark's hip, and ran into the navigator's rear bumper. David's body had flown over a median, so Clara drove over the median and then did donuts, running over his body 3 more times. Hotel employees heard his daughter, Lindsay, pleading with Clara to stop, and they also heard Clara basically just cackling, laughing while she was running over David. She then hit reverse to hit him 1 more time, then put the car back into drive to run over his body 1 last time, and she stopped it, leaving her car parked on top of him.
What a scene.
Oh, just anyone that was here watching this must have the craziest PTSD. I can't even imagine seeing that. When Clara finally stopped and got out of the car, she ran over to her husband and she began crying and said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was an accident. Look what you made me do." The private investigator, of course, was parked in the parking lot this whole time. So the entire ordeal was caught on camera, which, of course, would later not help Clara at trial.
That's a good investigator, too. They were always told to get everything on videotape because nobody trusts audio. None of that. Pictures aren't even very good. Videotape. So they always had videos. They were recording everything.
Yep. Everything. Every time you see the person you're watching, just get them on camera.
Yep.
When Clara was sobbing over David, Lindsay was screaming at Clara to get away from her daddy. Witnesses observed that he was still breathing, although it was extremely labored. Most of his face was actually completely scraped off, including his entire ears. His chest was also crushed by the car. An autopsy revealed that he had 10 broken ribs, a punctured lung, part of his heart was actually severed, his skull was crushed, and his jaw was broken.
Eek.
Those are some of the most severe injuries I've ever heard of, while someone's alive, especially.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's horrific to hear about, you know, someone being dismembered or whatnot, but most of the time when those things happen, the person is already deceased, and that's the only positive aspect of it, because to go through that alive is so horrific. And by all accounts, he was alive the entire time.
Yeah, there were people saying that, like, he was still breathing and he was dying. And then there were so many other people that were like, oh, he's dead. He died there right then. But no, he actually was. They thought, yeah, you have to be dead, right? But he was just laying there. Just, it's so sad. Because like you said, he's alive.
Yeah.
And when you read these injuries, it was really hard to read about.
Absolutely.
Some of these don't affect me, but this one, for whatever reason, right? Because he's still alive for it all. I mean, I guess you're alive till you're dead, right? But, you know.
Everybody that saw it thought there was no way that he survived.
Yeah, everyone just said, oh, he died. He's dead, but he was alive.
But when you hear the medical reports, it's clear that he was still taking breaths.
Yeah.
And when you see, you know, medical people, the first responders, or I think there was a doctor, if I remember, that was inside the hotel that went to see him. So, I mean, they, by all accounts, saw that he was still breathing. So he lived through that whole thing. It's just heartbreaking. That's awful. So, of course, everyone saw her do this. There was no doubt about who the suspect was or anything. So she was immediately charged with first-degree murder. Clara's defense attorney, George Parnham, was fresh off the loss of the Andrea Yates child drowning case. Clara was free on bail for the duration of the trial. Shockingly, her in-laws were the ones who escorted her into the courtroom because they were completely in support of Clara, and they even testified in her defense.
I think this is another spot where the religion aspect of this comes in. That they kind of were like, not that, he did it to himself, but there is this aspect of, well, he was committing a carnal sin,
yes.
right? And so therefore he brought on himself in this weird way. Maybe that's the only way they can deal with the loss of their son.
Yeah, I think that for them, it was just a way to kind of make sense of it all, was to apply religion to it. And just he got the consequences of doing an awful thing. But I can't imagine ever thinking that about my child. Ever, ever, ever. That's crazy to me. But it does make sense that religion would teach them that when you do bad things happen.
Yeah.
Oy, I can't even imagine thinking that, though. The defense claimed that Clara reacted the way she did because she had been desperately trying to keep her family together, and she just lost control, which of course got her a fair amount of sympathy. Especially a lot of the women that were following the case were like, yeah, I see your side, A lot of people were right with Clara, She claimed that she had only meant to hit Gail's parked car, and she never saw David between the two. Lindsay testified against her stepmother that she repeatedly told her to stop, but Clara didn't, and she just kept running him over and over and over.
There's not information about the grandparents and then Lindsay and their relationship, and if they stood by their granddaughter who's testifying against the woman that they're standing by. It's just bizarre. I was watching Dateline last night, and the mother was standing by the daughter saying that her granddaughter was the devil and the murderer and the killer. It's like her daughter did it, but she can't allow herself to believe that her baby did it. Mm-hmm. So it's the granddaughter, right? I'm curious about the relationship between the grandparents and the granddaughter and Lindsay, and I wonder what it's like now. I imagine quiet on their end.
Yeah, I really don't think they were ever able to recover from this. It doesn't seem like something they could bounce back from, and you don't read a lot about it. There's not a lot of information. So it just seems like none of them were ever able to forgive each other for choosing the sides that they did, The video of Clara from the private investigator was, of course, the most damning piece of evidence against her. At least twice, Judge Carol G. Davies had to stop the court and take a recess to reprimand Clara because she was sobbing during the entire hearings, and especially when Lindsay testified. She also had a lot of trouble hearing about David's injuries and how he was crushed to death and the description of that. So the judge kept having to step in because she was inconsolable about the things that she had actually done, about her actions. The judge decided that Clara hadn't premeditated the murder since, according to her defense attorney, George Parnham, she acted under, quote, sudden passion. The premeditation distinction enabled her to serve half of her sentence before being eligible for parole. And really, Parnham was trying really hard for probation only, as that was the way that she could still parent their 4-year-old twins. And they said that was what David would have wanted, but the judge wasn't buying it.
This attorney, coming right off the Andrea Yates case, also in Texas, so obviously he's like a local Texas attorney. He did a nice job on this. He really came about this, and especially when you find out that, David's the one that wanted the kids. Well, like David would have wanted. It's so twisted.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries real hard, but just doesn't really, this is premeditated. You look at it and it's like, oh, well, that didn't stick necessarily, but she got in the car with the kid and drove him over him. And it's on video. It's on video. So you're insulting my intelligence, and I can't deal with that.
Yeah, it just seems like he could ask for whatever he wanted, but most people weren't buying it, you know? I mean, if she did have some sympathy from people thinking, oh, it must be awful for her to have endured the affair and everything that David was doing, they still felt for her, but there was nothing to excuse her actions. And further than that, nothing that should say, oh, yeah, just let her out on the street so she could parent, you know?
Yeah.
That's a little extreme. So, but he kept asking. He was pushing for it. So Clara received a 20-year sentence and a $10,000 fine on what would have been her 11-year wedding anniversary.
So it'll be, 26 years? This Valentine's Day, it would have been 26 years. Cute.
Crazy. Lindsay Harris struggled a lot in the years following the murder, and sadly, she attempted suicide 4 times. My heart goes out to Lindsay's. Of course, David is the casualty in this, but Lindsay's life was altered forever.
Lindsay is just the walking wounded.
Mm-hmm.
How do you come back from that?
Yeah, the kind of trauma and PTSD and it must be awful. Clara and David's twin sons were raised by a couple living in their former neighborhood of Friendswood, Texas, which is especially shocking because the grandparents supported Clara so much, but then they didn't get custody.
So strange.
Very weird to me.
I agree.
I don't understand why that wouldn't be the case. Like I don't know what happened that she would be like, yeah, give them to the friends.
I remember in the episode we recorded and accidentally deleted, we just stared at each other for a while about this. Like, Wait a minute. Wait, they live with friends? They visit them. What is it? The twins visit their mother once a month in prison and turn 20 in 2018. But they visit them I just don't, it's so strange that they're with friends and they're not with their grandparents. I mean, unless they're really that old, but then where's Lindsay too? There's just a lot of with the kids. It's interesting how it was basically they were adopted.
Yes.
They were adopted out.
Yeah, I was trying to think of maybe there was some health issues or age problems with the grandparents. It really did seem, though, like they were kind of young and spry. So it does seem shocking that they wouldn't go to the grandparents. And especially, I had read that the friends that they had went to stay with already had twins themselves.
That's what I was just thinking, actually, as you're saying it. I was like, you know what? I bet that they had kids, same age or same, in the same realm. They're probably all friends. They go to the same schools. What's 2 more?
Yeah, it just may have been kind of almost a convenience thing where it's like, well, they're already friends. They're also twins, go to the same school,
I'm with this. You're on it.
It
I feel
might
like you're
be
on
that.
The track. Yeah.
But at the same time, those
weird.
grandparents
Still
must
weird.
have been pissed.
Yeah, still strange.
If they were healthy enough and she passed over them after they supported her.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, that is just the ultimate backstabbing.
That is true.
Yeah. So I don't know what the whole story of that was. So like you said, the twins continued to visit their mother once a month in prison. And I think that may have been a factor. If there was any issue where the grandparents supported her but wouldn't agree to bring them to visit, maybe. Who knows? So that may have been part of it. But they turned 20 in 2018. David's assets were split between Clara and the children, so all of them got about $2 million each, and Clara got $1.2 million. Clara's job in prison was to convert school textbooks into Braille.
Something she loves: school, books, knowledge. It's right up her alley.
Yep, perfect match.
Sounds like a cool job.
Now, Clara is 60 years old, and she's served 15 years of her 20-year sentence. She was actually released on parole in May 2018. Clara will remain on parole until 2023, with conditions being to abstain from drugs and alcohol, live in Galveston County, and have no contact with David's family.
Which tells me that's the Lindsay state of affairs.
Yes. It's a complete block. There's a wall up. A made-for-TV movie was made about the case called Suburban Madness, starring Elizabeth Pena as Clara and Cella Ward as Bobby Baca, who was the owner of Blue Moon Investigations. A UK tabloid referred to Clara as Clara the Driller Killer.
It's a great name. That was the kind of thing I was looking for when I was thinking Dennis. I wanted someone like a horror movie. I got pretty close.
And then you said you had seen a Sally Jesse Raphael with Gail.
So
you're the one that has the most information about this.
Yeah, Gail is super, like, it's a little interesting because when she was being investigated and all this with the ex-husband about being in this lesbian relationship with her best friend, they're saying, no, we're not. And then they appear on an episode of Sally Jesse Raphael with scarves wrapped around their heads and tied under their chins, black sunglasses on, for the episode entitled, My Husband Spies on Me. And it's just like, what are you trying to put out here? It just doesn't make any sense. It makes me question her. And the real interesting story about this is Bobby Baca, the owner of Blue Moon Investigations. Because this woman has her finger on the pulse of everything. And she's been used, I'm trying to remember, it's all written somewhere, on what movies and TV and cases, like huge cases she's been a part of.
Yeah, she's a very, very famous investigator at this point.
She has a lot of interesting things to say. I included the link to this expose article in our notes and stuff on here too. It's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, Bobby is definitely an interesting character that you don't really, like, in our notes get into much, but there's a lot more to look at with Bobby Baca.
There's too much. It's a whole, she's her own episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, she could be a Patreon episode because I think there's a lot of things that she's covered. She's got a lot of secrets.
I was thinking that the entire time because once I read the first thing, I was just like, oh, this is an absolute rabbit hole. I was in it, and there's a lot there. I think we might have to think about that.
Yeah. B for Bobby Baca.
Private investigator?
Maybe.
I'm just staring. I'm sorry.
That would actually be an interesting P for private investigator.
And almost all of them are connected to a murder.
Yeah.
So somehow we could find somebody dead there.
That would be interesting.
Private investigator and a bad one. Patreon, let us know what you think.
So that's pretty much it for our dentist episode. Take two. Because if you listen to the main feed, you know that I accidentally erased the first one. I can't believe I did that.
You didn't miss anything.
Oh man, I feel terrible. So we had to do it all over again.
It's fine. Here we are.
But here we are. And it got us closer to the Valentine's Day date of their wedding anniversary. So.
I can't believe that. What are the odds? That worked out so perfectly.
So yeah, that's it for dentists, and join us on our main show while we're still moving on from elderly murderers to letter F this week. And then we'll see you next time for another bonus episode. So thanks for listening, and thank you so much for being on our Patreon. We really appreciate your support, and you will see us next time with another bonus.
Thank you so much for your support. We really do love you and appreciate you.
So thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
The Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Old moon, yeah. That's Hugo, tickling the ivories. He just saved by bundling home and auto with Progressive. Gonna finally buy a ring for that gal of yours, Hugo? Send her my condolences. Hi-oh! This next one's for you two. There's a burglar in my heart. Thank you.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.